The only death among participants in the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery expedition from St. Louis to the Pacific Ocean and back occurred in August 1804. On August 20, Sergeant Charles Floyd expired.
With a great deal of composure,
wrote Captain William Clark in his journal.
Before his death, he said to me, "I am going away. I want you to write me a letter." We buried him on top of the bluff, 1/2 miles below a small river to which we gave his name. He was buried with honors of war, much lamented. A cedar post with the name Sergeant C. Floyd, died here 20th of August, 1804, was fixed at the head of his grave. This man at all times gave us proofs of his firmness and determined resolution to do the service to his country and honor to himself. After paying all honor to our deceased brother, we camped in the mouth of the Floyd's River, about 30 yards wide. A beautiful evening.
Floyd became deathly ill shortly after the expeditioners had met up with the first Native American representatives of several tribes living near the Missouri River. Lewis, whose doctoring skills were not insignificant for the time, found himself trying purgatives and various medicines in an attempt to save Charles Floyd's life. The effort proved fruitless, and approaching a river bluff that now overlooks Sioux City, Iowa, the young officer died of what today many historians attribute to appendicitis. Private Gass noted,
Floyd died notwithstanding every possible effort was made by the commanding officers and other persons to save his life.
Despite the ensuing dangers and close calls with nature and inhabitants of the West, no other member of the Corps of Discovery and crew perished during the 2.5 years' journey. Lewis's dog Seaman and his servant companion York also fared well. A remarkable accomplishment among many at a time when the Wild West was still decidedly wild. During this trying period, the voyagers had passed through an area of plains and hills now consumed by Omaha, Nebraska, and Council Bluffs, Iowa. North of Omaha are marshlands, including part of the severed river segment, making a vast oxbow, De Soto Lake. Of course, it formerly was a massive bend in the Missouri River and a precarious navigation point for steamboat travel. The area's botanical and animal populations gave Lewis and his companions much to ponder and admire as they gazed on the flattened prairie land that encroached both banks of the river. One of many large boat casualties on the river, the steamboat Bertrand hit a snag on what was then the De Soto Bend in April 1865 and sank. Today, a considerable part of the cargo is collected nearby after a salvaging effort in 1968. Canned food from the wreck, including peaches, oysters, tomatoes, honey, and vegetables, were found to be still edible. The Bertrand, built in Wheeling, West Virginia during the Civil War in 1864, was transporting passengers and supplies to the Montana country at the time it plowed into submerged tree parts and debris. Unlike many other sinkings along the Old Missouri, this collision did not result in deaths. A member of the expedition, Private Joseph Field, killed the first buffalo, giving the men a chance to diversify their diet and supply buffalo hump and tongue to other new delicacies such as beaver tail. Private Patrick Gass, a prodigious note-taker, soon was elected by a majority of permanent members of the expedition to assume the rank of sergeant and replacement duties of Sergeant Floyd. The captains confirmed their, quote, high opinion they had previously formed of Gass.
Much has been made of this election, including references to it being a dramatic demonstration of democracy. Gass's skills as a carpenter were particularly valuable on the expedition, and back in St. Louis 2 years later, Lewis cited Gass's, quote, manly firmness and, quote, fortitude in a letter to President Thomas Jefferson. Gass himself published his record of the expedition in 1807, 7 years before Lewis and Clark did. He died in 1870 at age 98, having seen the expedition fulfill its promise of opening up the West to exploration and settlement.
It was still August and hot again. The captains and 10 men hiked across expansive prairie country for hours, aiming for an imposing conical mound or hill that had been referred to by local natives as a, quote, mountain of evil spirits, hill of little people, and place of devils. The hill's inhabitants are very watchful and armed with sharp arrows with which they can kill at a great distance. Clark wrote in his journal that the local tribes of Sioux, Otto, and Omahas believed 18-inch tall people with, quote, remarkable large heads commanded control of that hill. Quote,
they are said to kill all persons who are so hardy as to attempt to approach the hill. No consideration is sufficient to induce them to approach the hill.
But that curse didn't stop the exploring foreigners from gaining the summit themselves. Sergeant Ordway reported finding, quote, none of the little people. Later, Lewis showed signs of extreme exhaustion and required some time to recuperate. His dog, too, reportedly had difficulty keeping up in the sweltering weather. Hundreds of buffalo and large flocks of birds intrigued the men, and the pristine flow of grass and stream added to the delight of the trekkers despite the sweat. I myself, in 2024, approached the hill but did not climb. Maybe a good thing, since I had no knowledge at the time of the rumor of a curse. Yet here, even now, it is possible to actually hike in the footsteps of those early explorers, to stop and stare and wonder at the odd, lonesome mound that seems to retreat modestly even as I march toward it. Our party of eastern travelers have now entered the realm of the greater Great Plains and the range of the Sioux, the largest hunting and warrior people of the northern plains. The other indigenous tribes generally feared them. The appearance of the Sioux on foot or horseback, like smallpox, augured possible death, or at least abductions. The Lewis and Clark party were increasingly on alert.